Good afternoon, everyone. It's Dr. Gershon with another Endeavor Better Health webinar and podcast. I am absolutely thrilled to be here today with a real visionary, a leader in healthcare, Tom Cassels, who's the CEO and president of Rock Health. Tom and I have had a number of really dynamic and I would say important and relevant conversations over the past several months. And we want to bring some of that to you. It's very important right now that we address the macroeconomic impact of a liquidity crisis, of changes in the digital landscape in the world. And those are some of the things that impact um, emerging companies in particular, looking at the new skill sets that are required for CEO, founder, entrepreneurs in leadership and resilience and partnering and collaboration. And and Tom is really a visionary, a humble visionary, but he's a visionary who's going to talk to you about Rock Health. What is Rock Health? What does it stand for? What is it doing in its investor category, in its advisory work, and its nonprofit work? All three are aligned very much with addressing where the puck is going, as Wayne Gretzky said, as opposed to where it is now. So, first, I want to, before we begin the webinar podcast, I want to thank everyone once again for being incredibly supportive of the Endeavor Better Health platform. We now have 1.3 million views. We're building momentum because I think that this platform is designed as an open source platform to collaborate in an integrative and iterative fashion where people can share their thoughts and comments. It's about collaboration and partnership, which is necessary for building a stronger, more sustainable healthcare system. So thank you, everyone, for logging in, for being supportive, for your thoughts and comments. And I would urge you, when you do log on, if you have a question, feel free to first let us know where you're logging in from. And second, please include your email so that if we can't get to your question today, we'll be more than happy to send you a response. So with that, I'm going to introduce Tom Cassels, who's the CEO and president of Rock Health, and ask Tom to talk to us a little bit and give us a background of both himself and Rock Health. What is his vision and what is Rock Health all about?
Well, thank you so much, Martin, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation. I don't know about visionary, but I have spent 20 plus years in the healthcare ecosystem. First as a health services researcher, then as a strategy consultant for providers, plans, digital health companies. The thing that actually is probably most integral to the way that I look at my role in healthcare is that I think this is an industry that is kind of deeply misunderstood, even by the folks inside of it. So what I've learned, how I've learned most of what is really kind of central to the way I go about my work and why I'm doing that at Rock Health is the fact that I'm a super user of healthcare. So I personally live with a serious mental illness, and I have lived experience of how fragmented and broken the idea of creating solutions for whole health needs are between physical medicine, mental health, etc. I have two handsome young sons who are both neurodiverse, and I have seen the distinction in terms of services that can be procured uh, if you have means versus if you don't. And it's incredibly painful to um, to 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 see my friends and their families who, frankly, did not have the same means, and it made me very angry. And it that experience in and of itself has has taken me from a track where I spent a lot of time really thinking about what might be, to getting closer to, uh, how can we find solutions for healthcare. Rock Health has been around since 2010 and has taken on a number of different forms. Right now, we are we're we're a transformation engine. We want um, to transform healthcare for all humanity and to bring more humanity to healthcare. That's our vision, and we know that you can't do that through one lever. So we have three levers that we think are all equally important to to drive toward our vision. The first is we focus all of our work on the lens of health equity, and we do that primarily through our parent organization, rockhealth.org. And there we focus on both the kind of opening of the aperture to founders and investors uh, to have conversations of great meaning from different lived experiences. So we champion really the kind of deal flow diversification toward more female founders, founders of color, founders from rural markets. And we think that that's really important because innovation, no innovation is innovation if it doesn't actually translate to the broadest possible population in our perspective. Now, in order to push that forward, we have two other levers. First, Rock Health Capital. And I should mention Katie Drasser is the CEO of rockhealth.org and really kind of my touchdown for being here. Rock Health Capital, which is led by Bill Evans, our general partner, is really focused on how do we support early stage entrepreneurs who have this vision of we're delivering full solutions, not features to healthcare. And he does an incredible job of kind of pushing through funding the entrepreneurial innovator. And then there's Rock Health Advisory, which I lead. I'm also a venture partner in Rock Health Capital. Rock Health Advisory is about pushing the intrapreneurial innovators. So folks who are inside large healthcare organizations, healthcare adjacent organizations like retail, big tech, etc., to really focus them on two areas. One, where can we be using digital to do what we do better? And two, where can we be using digital to do better things that aren't currently part of the healthcare value chain? So, my lived experience requires that I work with an organization that sees the lived experience of the broadest possible community, and has these different levers to pull, um, so that we can really push the timeline on transformation.
That's such a great overview, and so I think important for many of the CEO, entrepreneur, founders to understand that vision is the starting point, and then enrolling people in the vision, really is the engine that drives that. And frankly, what you've done is bring together some outstanding people who I've met recently over the past few months, um, who can take the vision, the shared vision, in fact, to create real meaningful change. And I think, the one of the key points and core points of this conversation today is to talk about the future and talk about in a practical, tactical way, what do we need in terms of people? What do we need in terms of skill sets? What is the changing landscape that in part is being driven by new innovation and technologies like AI and machine learning and deep learning? These new technologies do require different skill sets from entrepreneurs. There's also, in parallel to all of this, an adjustment being made by large industry leaders. And one of the exciting things about this conversation is that you have your finger on the pulse of emerging company CEO founders, as well as key industry leaders. And
Yeah.
so for me, when I'm a moderator or a keynote in conferences, the message, from industry is crystal clear. We want the technology. We want the innovation. We want to work with emerging companies. But there's often a disconnect between what the founders and entrepreneurs see as relevant, important, and their next steps compared to what industry leaders want. And the message is that there is a certain set of skill sets required an understanding of how do you bring innovation into a large scale business effectively? What does that require? And the thesis really is, which is centering on the core of our conversation, about leadership, about being able to adapt and pivot and bring technology in an integrative way, piece by piece, through collaborations and partnerships, working on various projects within industry, because it's not just a turn of the key. It's not, for the past 20 years, we were about, driving disruptive innovation at any cost. And now really cost is a factor, both human cost, as well as financial. So I love for you, with that kind of long preamble, um, which I took the liberty of giving, really to set the stage for you to talk about, you've made a lot of investments and you understand what industry needs and you see what's happening on the founder side. Talk about some of these leadership skill sets that you see as the next step in evolution, for Rock Health and to improve the healthcare system in general.
Yeah. Um, I think one of the most important um, leadership skill sets is self awareness. So, I think there are an awful lot of people who, for example, understand uh, the technology of the last decade, and I include big data, machine learning, AI. Uh, you know, these are not new technologies. They're also not products, uh, and I think some of the CEOs that I really admire understand that there's a difference between wielding a tool and understanding an actual job to do for their customers. So a good example of that is, a couple of companies that I really admire. Um, one is one that we've invested in at Rock Health called Arene. Arene is an AI digital platform for medication therapeutic management. And the CEO, Una Kim, who's a pharmacist by training, um, was really self-aware enough to understand the problem was not we have to optimize the pharmacological care plan. The challenge is we have a lot of people on medications that just stay on those medications for time immemorial, regardless of need. Um, we also have a lack of transparency for physicians in a given moment to see, okay, what 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 medications are people both knowledgeable that they are taking, and are they taking them? Are they actually filling these scripts? So in the end, what Arene does is it's truly excellent at giving a clear picture to physicians that they don't have right now of these are the scripts that have been filled for your patient. Given that, do you still want to make the same decision on adding a new medication? The other issue that it solves is, by the way, um, are these medications still necessary? So it's both a view into drug interactions, but it's also about deprescribing. Um, it's deeply unsafe for people to be on medications for long periods of their life that are not necessary. And so the self-awareness to understand the problem behind the problem that might not be quite as sexy, but is really driving outcomes on the quality and cost side. I have a lot of respect for people like Una who are pushing forward these business models that actually kind of make sense intuitively to the large players that I also work with. A couple of other folks who I think are doing this really well in the using AI include Elad Wallach at AI Doc, Tamir Wolf at Theater, who are really looking at how do you um, how do you become the safety net for catching um, human error. So in the case of AI Doc, missing missing bleeds in a CT scan. In at Theater, like when there is an outcome in a surgery that you didn't expect, how do you actually identify what were kind of root causes of something that went on during surgery? Or is it just something that you didn't know about the patient? Um, Again, the AI is not the thing. The use case and the self awareness to understand, okay, what are challenges facing providers in this case um, that end up costing patients, and going after that use case rather than just playing with data. And I think that's really important. I also think um, resilience is another huge leadership requirement. And a couple of the people that I am most most admire here, frankly, are very poorly served by the capital markets. Um, the first I would mention is Carlos Rodarte, who is the co-founder of a company called Veritios, which is really looking at how do you connect communities of service providers with the communities that they most likely should be serving, but there's just a yawning gap between getting a referral and actually receiving care. Now, you know that isn't that isn't necessarily rewarded as many SaaS-based digital health technologies are. And I think the resilience that Carlos shows is to find different mechanisms for funding to address a need that truly is a problem to solve and has a technological aspect of solving that problem, but is, service heavy. So, I have a lot of respect for for folks who are in that position, and I also have a lot of respect for people who view the job of creating partnerships that work um, for problems that cannot be solved by one party alone as a business model. I'm going to use another example of a company that we've invested in, Rosarium Health, and its founder, Cameron Carter. Cameron has a long background in the health plan space, and he believes, like I do, that the kind of last half decade of growth in the supplemental benefit category. I hate that term because it's often these benefits that are driven not by clinical fee schedules, but by environmental need, are the difference maker in people's whole health. And Rosarium really focuses on creating a marketplace that connects home contractors with occupational therapists to go into people's homes to make sure that they are um, safe for people to come home to from the hospital, safe for people to continue to live in as they age, and need to have more care in their home, but don't wish to go into an institutional setting. We can't afford the model for aging that we have today, and that insight that these two parties need to work together, I think is really a sign of that um, kind of leadership quality of understanding what dots need to be connected in order to be successful. So I apologize for the monologue, but it was a really good question. And I kind of see different characteristics as the kind of active ingredient for different companies.
Yeah, I mean, such a great overview, plus backed up with real data, real people, real life stories. We don't have time today to really get super granular on all of them, but I would like to focus in on a couple of things and maybe take a second to codify what I see as unifying messages. First, leaders in all three companies who have a vision. And I'm sure, and I would love to explore this, that that vision has morphed and changed and evolved, and that is part of leadership. Being humble, and you and I have talked about this. Being in love with your technology is never a great idea. Being in love with the idea that you have a tool, as you talked about, which others can use, and use cases which you talked about. So I'd like to focus in on the connection between this leadership ability to adapt, pivot, and partner.
Mm,
Because really, if you look at some of the great entrepreneurs of the world, that's what they do. They start off in one direction, they iterate, they listen to what the needs of the consumer are or the needs of the partner are. So I would love to be able to explore in any one of these particular companies that partnering aspect, which unlocked value for these companies. Because in this day and age, if you're siloed and you have an innovation and technology that you think is going to change the world, the chances are you're not going to be the next Google or Microsoft or Apple. You're going to need to partner with an intermediary. And I would say for us at Endeavor, while we look to work very closely with the Fortune 500 companies and develop project level partnerships, feasibility studies, commercialization, data driven studies, we actually look to sell our companies to the new unicorns, the $1 to $5 billion companies that are in hyper growth mode, because eventually they will be acquired by the larger companies. And so this this network or food chain, if you will, of partnering and data collection and gathering um, addresses an important point that industry leaders are bringing to me, which is how do you integrate technology, which is a tool to solve problems that we see, that we have. And you've given an example of three really cool companies with different and critically important problems. So I'd love for you to talk about, pick any one of the companies or more if you like, and talk about that ability to listen, to partners' needs, the use cases. That would be a great conversation.
yeah, and I also do want to. Um, Humility is not a word that gets thrown around in VC all that often.
Right.
Um, but the real kind of the folks who have staying power, they have it in spades. And I also think they have champions.
Yes.
So an example there, I would say that there are there are certain investors, and I, I by definition, if I name one person or 10 people, I will forget, um, uh, you know, a dozen more that I admire. Um, but there are some investors who are the definition of both um, conviction and patience. Uh, I I think the folks that I think about when I think about that, um, obviously I have a great deal of respect for my partner Bill Evans, but you know, I think uh, Lynn Chow O'Keefe, Julie Yu, the folks at Hope Lab, the folks at Capor Capital, um, what they're able to do is really tell the truth to people that they respect when people don't necessarily want to hear that truth. And you know, I think also when they, they talk about the problems in the problems they'll face in scaling their businesses, pointing out specific aspects that make more sense. So there's a difference between, we'll use Rosarium for example. Um, you know, I've seen other people who their approach is, what we're going to do is we're going to roll up a ton of occupational therapists. And what we're going to do is we're going to get sole source contracts for going out and delivering these supplemental benefits to check on, what needs to be the case for a safe admission to home to happen. Well, that's really a very expensive way to solve a problem, which is actually not solving the problem. Identifying what needs to happen is not a solution. It's a feature. Putting the people who can identify what needs to happen together with the people who can actually drill the holes, put in the ramps, put on the safety bars. You're not solving somebody's problem unless you're doing both of those things. And you certainly don't need to hire a lot of contractors or OTs enabled to do that. So, I think that the humility to listen to not just your customer but your investors. One that I come back to a lot, who's not an investor, but I will say is a very important part of how we do what we do at Rock Health, is Michael Esquivel from Fenwick and West. And one of the things that I think he does with the founders that he works with is, you know, he is always in your corner, and he's going to be, he's going to be tough when he needs to be tough. And I think, there are businesses today that people may have used the example of a very successful business and that I admire, which is Evidation. Back in the early days, Christine and Lemke and Deb Kilpatrick, I think there was a feeling that they might be more of a consulting services company than a data company, and really working hard to make the reality of what they do, which is a value added data business. A big part of that was just their grit, but also the advice that they received from folks like Michael, and so there are no, what I've come to understand is that whenever you hear someone tell you the hero story of their company, be skeptical. None of us are heroes. We all have to be able to listen and learn from people who want to see us be successful. And that's a leadership characteristic that I think we haven't talked about, which is listening.
Yeah.
It might sound trite, but there are two different ways of listening. Listening until you can respond, and listening, especially for things that you disagree with or you think are unfair. Um, and then actually holding those things in your mind as, if this was true, how would I think about my business differently? How would I think about the people I bring into my business differently? How would I think about the technology that is at the center of my business differently? I I am I'm constantly asked about, unicorns that uh, unicorns that fall. Everybody wants to talk about Olive this week and how it's a you know it it, it was, some people say it was inevitable and some people say it's a trend. They're both wrong. You know, it's not a trend. Um, the the difference is, they just didn't have strong horses. And I couldn't care less about unicorn status. Um, uh, uh, all of our LPs pretend I didn't say that. Uh, what I care about is, do you have the people both at the top of the organization leading, around those leaders, and the capability of communicating to a team that what we're doing right now, um, we can be we're going to change, and it's a change for the better. People don't like change. People are very uncomfortable with that, and so it takes a special type of leader, um, to be strong enough to make that case. And now more than ever, that the folks who are leading these strong horse companies, um, that they're listeners, they're adapters, they're partners. They're looking for all of the different ways that what they've learned through the life of their business could be of value to the future of their business. And that's just a lot different than leaning on whiz bang tech stacks. Um, you know that's just not that that alone, may get you in the door. But if you get in the door and then search for use cases for year after year after year, you may achieve unicorn status, but you're going to be telling a story that's very different than the companies that end up having lasting impact.
No, I mean, there's so much to unpack there, and really kind of words of wisdom, I think, authentically, brought to the forum, with an understanding that both you and I, have been doing this for a couple of decades, which by its very nature means that we have experiences and scars. And so part of the message is, and I'll say this, hopefully, with a unified voice for both of us, you know, Endeavor and Rock Health stand for collaboration and partnership, and we're here to help in any way that we can without a sense of, hubris. Like, we're only human beings, and we've made, many, many mistakes. I'm sure both of us. But through those mistakes, there is an intuitive process which looks at what is the template for success. And when I speak with entrepreneur founders, I ask them generally four questions, which I think I hope is meaningful. First is, how do you define success? And we've been talking about that today. Like, the success of the past 20 years, as defined by Silicon Valley, is not going to be the success story or these unicorns of the next 20 years. It's going to be the impact that the companies have, the sustainable impact.
Mhm.
And how do you begin to tell, pre-seed and seed stage level companies that it's not about the one or $500,000 check, but it's about building a strong business with strong teams that can, weather the ups and downs, of the currents and the tides. And so that takes leadership and character and courage and conviction and partners who, as you said in one of your comments, you didn't use the word mentor, but you need advocates, you need supporters, you need people who believe in you. You need champions is the word that you used. And so I think that what's exciting for me is these are human values. These are very humanistic values. The importance of humanistic values is that they're very, very strong when you build them with aligned vision.
Yeah.
And so I think the first thing is what is the definition of success? And then the second question is who do you need to enroll to build that success? What does that enrollment process look like, whether it's a person or a champion or a company or a combination? And then finally, the last two would be, when you achieve success, what are people going to say about you and your company? What do you stand for? What is your brand? What is your image? And then lastly, what is the roadmap, the long-term roadmap to be able to continue this success? How did you get there and where are you going to go? And so for me, these questions require feedback from other people and organizations. And one of the entrepreneurs that I particularly find outstanding is Reid Hoffman.
Mm.
I think he really understands this mosaic extremely well. I think he brings sage words without chest pounding to open forums, quite frequently. And I think I could talk to you for hours about this, but we are running out of time. So what I want to do first of all is just a huge thank you for this important chance to hear your thoughts about the incredible people that you're working with, the support that you've given them, the vision that they have. I'd love to invite all of the companies that you mentioned onto the BetterHealth platform, should they choose to take advantage of that for the purpose of sharing, just like we shared now. Um, Hopefully this conversation has been a catalyst for thought, for exchange of ideas between entrepreneurs, between industry, and hopefully the notion that we can build successful companies that really have meaningful impact on healthcare and human beings has been a very important core message here. With that, I really want to thank people who have signed in today, and I will say one of the companies that I personally have a vested interest in, um, a company that is in the telemedicine industry has logged on today. I want to thank Jose Lima and Tiago Caderas, Pedro Lopez, who have all taken the leap of bringing an important healthcare company from Europe over to the U.S. It takes a lot of courage to be able to do that in a time of economic stress.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that you know a shout out to everyone who's logged in today. Alexandra, thank you so much. Tiago, Jose, Gloria. We have people dialing in from Germany, from Norway, from the United States. Thank you so much for your support. And I would say if you have any questions of Tom, feel free to forward them to me at endeavor@gershoncapital.com. I'm happy to pass them along. I want to thank everyone for the tremendous support they've given. And for all those entrepreneurs and founders out there, please take heart in that there are a lot of people who want to help. And I think Tom clearly is one of those people who um, you know has shown by actions over quite a number of years that there is a thoughtful process that respects human values, and that the mission, when it's aligned with important contributions to human beings, is supported by people who sustain their support, both financially and strategically. So I want to thank Tom once again for the work that he's done, for the work that he continues to do. And I look forward to our next conversation, which hopefully will be very, very soon. So thank you, everyone, for signing in today. Tom, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate everything.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Hang on for 1 second, Tom, and I'm just going to sign us off here.
You got it.